Hi everyone, my name is Matt Conant. I'm a writer and director at Cinevore Studios based out of Norristown. We make fiction and commercial video and all sorts of other stuff. Mostly here we're here today to talk about fiction. I will introduce everyone else, or they can introduce themselves, including Chris. And then we'll get started. We'll show you a couple of clips from web series and things that we've worked on, and a couple of short films. We'll probably just do, say, 3 clips at the beginning that are random, that I don't know what they're going to be. So it'll be fun for all of us. And then we can answer your questions about any of the stuff that we have done, or general filmmaking questions. And if any of you want to sit up closer because you probably have lots of room and we can hear you better, you're welcome to. So, meanwhile, let's hear from everyone else. Introduce yourselves. Really close to the microphone.
I'm Carmen. I work with Mixed Nuts Productions, living in 8 bits, actor, writer, creator, things of those natures.
Professional, quiet person.
Yeah.
My name is Ponter. My first name's Michael, and yeah, I've been doing stuff with Mixed Nuts Productions since I was in like 3rd grade. And that's how I met Matt and all these awesome people.
What's up there, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Rogelio. Here to put a show here at Retrocon. I play in Riggy on Nerd vs. Geek, coming straight from Cinevore Studios.
Ro is an actor. The rest of us are behind the camera people most of the time, so I shouldn't say the rest of us. Anyway,
we try to be actors.
Chris?
Yes, and my name is Chris Potako. I do special effects, all manner of post-production stuff for both Nerd vs. Geek and Living in 8 Bits.
So I think that covers it for the moment. Enjoy some hilarious, hopefully, fiction, and then we'll talk to you more afterwards. At some point towards the end, we're going to try and show a couple of short films that we made as well for a company called Red 5. That's a video game company that commissioned us to make shorts because they liked the web series that we were making. But in the meantime, we also have a new addition to the panel up here. Introduce yourself, sir.
My name is Robb Stech. I'm an actor in the Philadelphia area in New York, and I was in Nerd vs. Geek with Matt and Steph. I came to know them through this project and also worked on Red 5 films with them, which we may or may not watch.
And a producer in your own right.
Sure.
So, like I said at the beginning, we're happy to take questions about, well, let me see a show of hands first. How many people are familiar with our work up front? Okay, a few, maybe half. And how many people are like filmmakers or aspiring filmmakers? Some of the same people, all right. Everyone else is here because it's something to do. Woo! All right, awesome. We'll try to be entertaining for you then. Does anyone, if anyone has any,
So there is no try, just do, like Yoda said.
We will be entertaining.
That's right.
So, does anyone have any questions about filmmaking or any of the things you've seen from us either just now or previously?
Can you explain the process that you have for pre-production and, okay, we want to use this certain bit, or we have this character that we would like to use? Just go into that in detail.
All right, probably everyone up here has different answers for that. So, fortunately, why don't you start, Rob? Yeah, pre-production. How do you do it? Do you start with a character? Do you start with a script? Do you start with an idea? Do you have a whole storyline in mind? Where does a project begin for you?
Let me hit this quickly from 2 different sides. Working for Matt and Stephanie in pre-production was casting and then talking about the characters as they let us shape everything on Nerd vs. Geek around our nerdier centered selves. They said, like, what are you into that's nerdy or geeky and really cool to some people and really off-putting to others? And then we built a show around that, which was really beautiful. For the stuff that I write and produce, we start by making the script and then going over it 2 or 3 at a time, 2 or 3, 4 or 5 times, looking for locations, and then casting. Because if you don't have everything else in check before you bring people on board with ideas and conflicts and problems, then things just go to crap real fast. That's how I approach it.
Yeah, I think usually it depends what kind of project it is for me. So if it's a one-off comedy, like a 3-minute something, it usually starts with the idea. And it's usually an idea that we have that we're like, that's actually a producible idea. It doesn't involve spaceships or underwater scenes or whatever. Although now that we know Chris Potako, visual effects master, sometimes I'm like, can you do a spaceship? And he's like, probably. Right. But that's right. So that's what he would charge to build an actual spaceship. So, but no, it would be, usually it starts with an idea, and the idea goes, it turns into whatever, either it's a short script, either it's a feature script, or it's a web series or something. And then for Nerd vs. Geek, the way it evolved was an idea into casting came before we had any scripts, and we actually met Rogelio, we met Robb, and we said, we asked them what are their ideal characters, what characters would they like to play, and we took some of those notes and we took some of our own ideas and we built this world around these 8 strange different characters, and everyone managed to work together really well, I think. But that's, I think, fairly unusual, so it varies. But for us, it varies from project to project. Chris?
Well, I'm mostly a post-production guy, generally speaking. That's like my specialty. But I also make films for Matt's Film Festival. That's actually how we met. He recruited me because he liked what I did. For that, I usually come up with a bunch of ideas, and none of them work at all. And then we have to scramble and we make a completely different story. And then I fix everything in post. So
That's the recommended way of doing it, by the way.
yeah, don't do it that way. I mean, only if you're familiar with post.
Yeah, Carmen and Ponter, you're going to probably talk about your own projects, including living in 8-bit.
Well, it varies. Like when we usually come up with an idea for something, the first step is determining whether it's like for the web series or for a short film or even on feature length if it has enough legs. When we first started doing Living in 8 Bits, it was more of just an idea to do a web series. And from there, I guess you can say our pre-production has kind of evolved from actual production. For example, when we were doing Commando, we would come up with different ideas for the next Commando while we were filming. And so our pre-production kind of came from that, and that's kind of where our storylines eventually came from. But if you want to go back to like the first and second season where our ideas came from, pre-production wise, it was more like we were playing a game and we would think of how it would be funny to incorporate it into real life. And going into the actual, the writing of it, usually that was emails were bounced back and forth. Before we were doing emails, Mike would actually send me, we would meet up and he would actually give me a script to read and tell me to review it that way. But with emails and whatnot, he sends me an email, tells me to review it, take a look at it, see if there's anything he can change. And from there, pre-production wise, it's a matter of just scheduling. We're all getting a little older, so scheduling gets a little bit difficult, but usually we try to map out where the main characters would be most available, and then we just kind of build a crew around that. Like, hey, can you show up on Saturday? We got all the, we got the main characters who are ready to go. Can we get a crew now together? If not, you just kind of, you flub it as much as you can. You set up a microphone and just hope that it picks up everything. But yeah, I guess that's pretty much how we do our pre-production for the web series. Everything else is just brainstorming in groups. When we do our short films, usually it's Mike and I who are just talking either via text message or something along those lines, coming up with ideas for a short film. And that's usually how that pre-production works.
Yeah, for Living in 8 Bits, at first it was easy because we had all these ideas and no episodes. And we just took our favorite games and took tropes from them. Like, what if a descendant of Simon Belmont were alive today, what kind of vampires would he fight? So the natural progression was he would fight the vampires from Twilight. So we came up with Greg Belmont, and he would fight people like Edward, and so on and so forth, glittery vampires. And like, what if Mega Man has all these robot masters, but there has to be some rejected robot masters? So what if we had someone related to Dr. Wily who would sift through all these bad robot masters, and we had an episode that way. So in the beginning it was very easy because we would just touch on little things that made us giggle about our favorite games in the past. And the episodes would just flow. Now that we have so many in the bank, we have to, like, what haven't we done yet? So it's like, we haven't done a Mario Kart episode, what made us laugh about that? So it would just, it's organic in the games that we used to play a long, long time ago, and our favorite memories, and that's how the pre-production would work, just general conversations about what would make us laugh, and how can we turn that into a 3 to 5 minute skit, and the rest is history.
Yeah, the great thing about Matt and Steph is that they let you incorporate some of you into your very character. I remember going to the audition over there in Norristown, and I just came in, it was a ton of energy, and I told them, hey, I used to be on a little show called Dancing on Air, which you probably saw on PHL 17. That's right. So I told them about that, and then next thing I know, I'm dancing in some of the episodes as a great.
Almost all of the episodes.
Should have been all the episodes. No, thank you though for that. It was an amazing experience, and I got to dance as a grape, the grapest of them all. That's right. And also, for a little surprise, in episode 2, I showed up as a dinosaur one day that they weren't expecting. So yeah, because the episode was called Dinosaur, so I was like, I got this little dinosaur costume at home, so I'm gonna rock this set. You're welcome very much.
Yeah, Ro's one of the only actors that we were like, you probably don't have an entirely purple shirt and jeans you can wear. And he's like, yes.
No, I do. Yep.
So that's a nice bonus when you run into that sort of thing. We actually stopped asking him eventually. We're like, just wear all green, wear all red. Like he had it. So, did we answer your question? Okay. Yes. Oh, hang on a sec.
Whoa, that was really fast.
No.
Oh my gosh, so fast he overshoots.
Overshot right here.
We'll get there.
My son is making an indie film, but it's not based on original characters. He's doing something on Batman Cacophony. He's interested, right now he's doing post for the trailer. He's hoping to debut the trailer at Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con. But he is interested in learning more about gaining capital and also any special effects devices. I'm sure you're aware that Batman would probably require a massive amount of special effects.
Probably. It's interesting. I mean, the main thing, obviously, he's going to run into with a fan film is licensing. I mean, he's probably not going to license. Okay, that's cool. I mean, so in terms of rights of the character, though, it's probably not likely. So it's probably not an avenue that he needs to be exploring if he's looking at just screening at conventions and things as opposed to theatrical, Warner Brothers release or something. Yeah, so it's like a reel, sort of, like a cool, yeah. That's actually sometimes that's a great idea, because if you have a character that people have heard of, if you're not making money from that specific project and not trying to, you're just trying to get your name out there, that stuff is a lot more likely to go viral if it's good, because people will be like, check this out, it's got Batman in it, and they'll share it, even if they... Can you get rid of the mic back? I'm sorry.
Another Batman thing blew up. Batman Dead End blew up is kind of like the way I think he's trying to go.
Yeah. So, and I've seen I think there was a Batman versus Alien or something
That was in Batman Dead End.
Okay, that's the one. All right, yeah. So yes, So it can work, and it's a lot. Sometimes it's easier to make something viral with a character you don't have the rights to, but again, you have to not run ads on it. You have to not do anything that could potentially get you
Money.
profit. Yes, success. No, it's a neat idea. And in terms of special effects, I guess I would ask Chris. But it's funny, we saw before we run a film festival also. Stephanie Uhas is my production partner at Cinevore, and she and I started a film festival. The organization's called Project 21, and there's a 21-day filmmaking competition is one of the programs that it runs. So some of the people here have been involved in that. Yes, Jason in the middle there acted in a couple of them this year.
And would you be allowed to show, say, a film about Batman in that?
We probably could in a screening of other shorts for that one time. Like, it's not that film going out getting distribution, but it's also not specifically about Batman. I think, because I've seen all of the films, but only once. There's a film that's basically a detective story that got submitted this year, and it's a detective interrogating or investigating a witness to something. And there's like 2 quick shots of some kind of caped thing around that probably is supposed to be Batman. I know I'm spoilering this film festival for some of you who haven't seen it, but it's like so vague that Batman couldn't, whatever, the DC Comics couldn't sue over this. Yeah, I know. If it's like definitely Batman, then yeah, it would be much less likely for us to be, because we make our filmmakers sign a release. Yes, I have the rights to everything in this film, but it's a different avenue that he's going for. So, it's like, another good person to ask this question to would be James Rolfe if he's still here, because he made a film. The Angry Video Game Nerd. He made the Angry Video Game Nerd movie is about the video game E.T. for Atari, which are, Atari's not in business anymore, but E.T. is a Steven Spielberg property, and there's definitely some copyright behind that. So they called the game E-E-E-T-E-E, and they put a little mustache on E.T., and they did like all sorts of things to try and sort of hide the copyright, and again, I don't think they're doing a wide theatrical release where it would get attention.
I think his ultimate dream is with this is that Kevin Smith will see it and pick up his production team, not necessarily with this project, but as a calling card.
Exactly, a calling card project. It's probably a great idea. Effects-wise, any thoughts, suggestions? What programs?
Yeah, that's a big question. That's a big question. And you also have to separate, it's one of those things that gets kind of confused by a lot of people. Special effects generally means things that you do in camera, live. Visual effects are what you add afterwards in post. Both.
I don't think I even knew that.
Right, both avenues are useful, they both have their pros and cons. These days it seems like a lot of people are going back to trying to do more special effects and less visual effects, which I think is generally a good thing. But, something like Batman, where you could have fights and explosions and various weaponry and all, that's tough.
As a mom, especially with things like explosions, how do I make sure my son is safe?
I can't.
Do them in post.
Yeah, do them in post. Do them in post.
Shake the camera a lot while shooting it, and then you add things in the computer. There you go.
Or I would actually recommend not shaking the camera a lot, compositing everything, and then shake the camera in post. That would be my recommendation.
I was wondering if you guys were going to make a movie.
If we were going to make a movie of which?
Of Living in 8 Bits.
Living in 8 Bits, the movie. What do you guys think?
Well, it's good to see we have appeal. We've spoken about it. The problem is with an idea like Living in 8 Bits, it's such a 5 to 10 minute idea that it's hard to expand something like that into a full feature length. Could we probably do a short with it? Yeah, we'd probably do something like 15 minutes. But to do something probably feature length, we're talking like 60 to plus minutes, it's it would probably get really boring after about the first 20. You can only do enough video games into one movie where it would probably get even confusing after a little bit. But we have tossed around the idea a couple times of possibly extending something longer than 5.
I heard the idea to do like a trailer of a feature film once, but not the actual film ever. Just like,
Right.
if we were making a film, this is the awesome, this 3 minutes of it.
Yeah, Mike did. Yeah, he threw out an idea, and I don't want to give away too much because I don't know if he'd ever end up doing it. But he wanted to do a trailer of one of our regular occurring characters, with everybody involved as a regular occurring character coming into the trailer and just over the top, explosions and things like that, and just insane amount of action. It's on the back burner right now. I know he still has the desire to do it. But will it get done? We'll see. Wait and see kind of thing. The idea is there, but it would involve everybody. It would be, it'd be different.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to compare us to this, but it's sort of like asking, would you make a Saturday Night Live movie? It's like, nah, it wouldn't even be a thing that you could do. I mean, you could make a Wayne's World movie. So if we maybe took one character like a Greg Belmont, we might be able to stretch that into something more than 5 minutes. But
yeah, but how much of Jeff could you deal with?
I love Jeff. I could deal with Jeff all day. But yeah, I mean, it is something that we tossed around and laughed about. But I mean, it works better in short bursts, and yeah, that's sort of how we feel about it.
The interesting thing, can I talk about something that I'm in no way involved with?
No.
Great.
Yes.
The really fascinating thing about living in 8-bits and YouTube and all this, because I've come to study it just as a performer who does other things besides Cinevore and such, you have to completely understand and play to your audience until you're so famous that you're Brad Pitt or Johnny Depp. And the Living in 8-Bits audience is conditioned to enjoy and love and suck up these 3 to 5 minute shots. Whereas if you put 95 minutes in front of them, they might just throw up and walk away, because that's 90 more minutes than they want to see of Living in 8-Bits in one dose. You know what I'm saying? Like,
No, you're hitting it
really
right.
need to cater to those people sometimes just to make sure they remain your people.
The premise behind, like Rob's saying, the premise behind what we do is supposed to be make you laugh and then move on from it. Like get everything right there in front of you and move on and go to the next one within a matter of 5 minutes. I mean, it's like, yeah. I mean, you pretty much hit it on the head. Like you would get bored of us after about 85 minutes. So you're just like, all right, I get it.
And I mean, you guys have done other feature film, like you've worked with Mike and probably other people on other feature-length films. It's just tough if it's a sketch-based show with a bunch of different concepts every time to stretch it out, I think, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, we've done a number of shorts and feature lengths outside of Living in 8-Bits. I know I worked with Mike well before Living in 8-Bits actually started. We did a feature length called Township. And then after that we did just a few short films that ended up in film festivals here and there. And then we did Footing. So we have dabbled in feature-length films. There's always, you always kind of keep ideas in the back of your head about what could be a feature-length film. A lot of the stuff, we have ideas with Living in 8-Bits, but we couldn't continue it, but we do have ideas that, hey, maybe this will work as a short film. And we've even extended short films into feature lengths. I know if Jeff were here, he would mention Connie. He did a short film for Connie that he wants it to be more, and it's a good idea, and it could be more, and I think he wants to expand it eventually. But generally, that's how things go with those. Is you have like a short film. All right, this would be a good scene in something. We can incorporate this. And it builds from there.
Yeah, as far as Living in 8-Bits is concerned, probably not. But as far as we are concerned, we're always looking to make bigger and better things. And it's not out of the question.
What do you guys like doing better? The episodic one-off ones, or ones with recurring characters in new scenarios?
That's tough. I myself, I like to do new characters each time. With the Commando, I enjoyed doing the Commando, but when we did Blades of Wheels, like I really enjoyed exploring like a different character and taking it somewhere else. Like if you had to say that I had 3 different reoccurring characters, it would probably be like the Blades of Wheels, the Commando, and then just myself as a third. And I really don't enjoy being myself. I'm more of a doing other things kind of thing. So I enjoy probably just doing different characters each time, like figuring out. When we filmed, for example, when we filmed the Pills episode, I sat down with when we were about to film it, and I actually pitched the idea for him to have a German accent, and I was really pushing it, and Joey and Mike both said no, because I read like maybe the first 3 or 4 lines, and their immediate reaction was no. You would flub a little bit, and it would get burned on that. It would distract from the actual jokes of the whole thing. So I actually we tried to figure out a way to make that character different, and the way we ended up working it out where he was just very arrogant, fast, and straightforward. Like this is a matter of fact kind of person. And I guess that's just a different character that we ended up creating, and that's kind of how I interpret the script sometimes, is trying to find a different attitude or different persona of each character. So I probably enjoyed that a little better.
I personally like doing different, completely separate episodes from each other, but there comes to a point where the audience likes Greg Belmont, so we want to give them what they want, so we'll make another Greg Belmont episode. And once Jeff is established as Greg Belmont, you can't change Greg Belmont. You need to have Jeff back, and those are absolutely great. And like Joey Christopher with Mario, it's like if you saw me dressed up as Mario, you'd be like, where's Joey? But as far as keeping it moving and fresh, I personally like keeping the episodes separate. That way, someone who's brand new to us doesn't have to go back to episode 14 and catch the origin of so-and-so. They can just be like, I played Dr. Mario, episode 48 is awesome. And they don't have to see 1 through 47. And that's just how it works for me, personally.
And I feel like sometimes, Ponter, like the episodes with Link in them, like at least when I'm talking to Mike on the writing side, you had jokes about like Mike worked in jokes about like the pots, destroying all the pots in like episode 40 or 41 or something. But then when he was like, we want more ideas, let's keep getting ideas from everyone. I was like, all right, what about the stores and the fact that the stores in some games like all look exactly the same, or the idea that in Zelda game you can bomb a wall and there's like a perfectly fine room behind it and you just go around bombing and burning things to see what there is. Like that's still preposterous. And he's like, all right, well if we did that, obviously that's a Link episode, so obviously it's a Ponter episode. So then it becomes a series not because you're trying to make a series of episodes and continue a storyline, but just because it's the same sort of universe that the joke comes from.
Yeah, we keep going back to our same favorite games, which
Right.
I think is understandable.
Like the last episode, when you're filming in a garage, it doesn't even have the full name of the garage on it. Like I thought you guys had to wipe something out to make it look like a random garage or something like that. Like getting, different guests, like Square Painter involved as well. How do you get these people together to do all this?
So how do we get locations and
garage.
permissions and people, guests? Yeah. I think the garage was exactly what the garage was called. I think it's just a really generically named garage. It was called like Advanced Automotive or something. Like I don't remember, and I'm sorry whoever's garage it was. Mike Lecision, the showrunner, that was his garage. I had asked my mechanic, we had asked other mechanics around. We weren't getting immediate answers from people, so Mike just went to his own mechanic. He's like, can I use this? I'm not going to be in your way. I'm just filming in the parking lot all day. And the guy was like, yeah, sure, that's great. And then we showed up, and I was like, I forgot to bring, there's a joke about Luigi using a vacuum on ghosts in there. And I was like, I didn't bring, like in the script it says he holds up a vacuum. I'm like, I forgot to bring a dustbuster. And Mike's like, I'll just go back there and ask him if they've got a wet dry vac. And he'd run back there and he's like, yeah, sure, take it, I don't care. So a lot of it is just finding locations that are cool with you using the place, like talk to everyone, because in the Philadelphia area, at least I've found, most places think it's cool that you're making a film. Mostly, not like in Philadelphia or like union-centric locations necessarily. There's a lot of rules and regulations to that and costs. But somebody's house, somebody's store, I've heard stories in the last week of, I think even Darren and Rachel, who run Vigilante Media and are running the cameras currently, you were just telling me you got a pharmacy? You just walked into a pharmacy and you're like, we're making a movie. How about we make part of it here? And they're like, yes.
Yeah.
That's basically what happened. Yeah, so if you need locations, ask around, is what I found. Rob?
Yeah, it's tricky when you go into a city like New York or Philadelphia because they have so much red tape and they have film offices for those cities. New York, Philadelphia has its own film office, and they're the worst people in the world because they want you to have production insurance that'll cost you about $1 million, and they want to make sure that you have this person on set for safety and this person on set for paperwork, and it's obnoxious. It's insane.
You heard it here first. Film offices, worst people in the world.
You can tell I don't work for them. But when you go to King of Prussia or Oaks or Phoenixville and you walk in and you buy 10 cupcakes from a bakery and say, this is a really great place. I really like this here. Do you mind if we shoot something and we'll use your name? Or if you don't want us to use your name, we'll shoot a free commercial for you can put on YouTube, and then you can link people to it from your Facebook page or Twitter account with 12 followers. And they're like, wow, that's great. And it is, because that would cost any production company, the price tag of that would be like $500 to $600. But if you have a camera and know how to use iMovie, you're saving them money and they're helping you. So there's really, really innovative and simple ways around that. And we've actually done some of them. I produced something with this front row guy right here, Brian Donahue. We did that for a bakery. We went to a bakery and we shot a short commercial for them to shoot there for a day on a web series that I was producing. And everyone was happy. And the actors bought cupcakes that day just to be cool. Like, everyone was happy. And that was definitely not in the city of Philadelphia. It was outside of it. So there's just thoughtful ways you can help everyone involved.
And I think the second part of your question was about guests and co-stars and whatnot. At this point, we're friends with Square Painter, so if we want Square Painter in a thing, he'll probably say yes, or he'll say go to hell, and we'll be like, fine, screw you too, and then we'll...
Square Painter's mean.
I know. This imaginary Square Painter I just invented is a jerk. Anyway, no, like if we go to a convention like this, we meet people, we talk to people, eventually we become friends with them or we don't. We haven't yet worked with Justin Silverman in the back, but one day I could, he'll never let it happen, but perhaps one day if we pay him enough money, maybe.
For all those facing forward, he just gave Matt the finger, so you know.
That's right, all right, so, fine, screw you too.
I love you, Justin.
We're just working with ourselves from now on. I don't know. So just talk to people, be friendly. Eventually you meet people who know people, and you just work gradually with more and more interesting, famous people than you. And then they help promote the stuff that you're doing and get it to a wider audience. Yeah. I don't know, anything to add to that? Anybody else?
Keep the people that are good, get rid of the people who suck. That's it. It sounds a little obnoxious, but it's a very good philosophy. Because when you start out, you probably suck, and everybody you're working with sucks. Get better. Realize what you're doing wrong. Every time you do something that's bad, don't be, your art's not a wonderful, unique snowflake. Check it out, think about it, and be like, all right, this sucks, and for what reason does it suck? And then endeavor to fix it. And just keep doing that, and one day, people will start being like, wow, you're good at this. And you're like,
you don't suck as much.
When did that happen? It's like, a couple years of endeavoring to do better based on being able to critique your own work, I think is very important.
And eventually you get to the point where your stuff looks good enough that people are coming to you, and you don't have to seek them out and ask favors. People will be like, hey, I like that thing you did, I want to be a part of it. And if you like them and you want to work with them, then it becomes an easier ask. Oh yes, and good point. So Chris says, get rid of the people who suck. Brian is adding, jettison them nicely. So you don't want to burn bridges, you don't want to make enemies, even if you don't get along with someone. You don't necessarily need to make that abundantly clear. You can just, diplomatically phrase things and whatnot.
Well,
And
you
just
don't-
like, it doesn't, sometimes someone is perfect for one project and just not right for another one, for one reason or another. And so there's like always sort of a back and forth that has to happen. And usually most people that you're working with understand that. Usually.
Right, yes. I should clarify that. Don't tell people they suck and burn bridges. Perhaps I should put it this way. Work with the people that are good. That way, that's a slightly more positive way of looking at it. Work with the people that are good. Don't not work with the people that suck.
That's
any
good.
better?
Those of us sitting on the left side of the table are just picturing Chris Reed's Craigslist every time you lean up to the microphone.
I am.
Chris runs a series, which you should check out, called Chris Reed's Craigslist, where he just finds the most ridiculous or obnoxious or preposterous Craigslist post he can and reads them in a sexy voice. So it's hilarious.
It really is amazing. It really is.
It's a very nice microphone, and I speak very smoothly. People like it.
It's weird.
Can I just add a 10-second button on that, on not working with bad people? Don't work with your friends just because they're your friends, even though they may be persistent and be around and be super available and super interested in making a movie. Sometimes your friends aren't good actors, and it's just the way that it is. Or your friend can't play the 55-year-old president of the United States in a film that is convincing and should be seen by other people. Just do things that are good for your work first, and good for your personal life second, in your work life.
It's true. I would agree with that.
Terribly phrased. Terribly phrased.
No, I get it, because like the first film I ever made, and granted it was destined to suck anyway because it was the first film I ever made, but it was basically an X-Files like ripoff, and it was a feature film, and the script was 188 pages, so there were all kinds of ways it was going to go wrong. And it had like 47 characters in it, and there was like, so also it had all of us as 18-year-olds playing FBI agents. So right off the bat, it was not believable at all. And we were like, well, this is easier to have ourselves play these things than to try to figure out how to cast a movie. That's stupid. So, and like, fortunately, we ruined our own time with that movie and not like ever announced, like having professional actors in that movie, they would have shown up on set and be like, what in the hell did I just get myself into? So it was definitely better that it was that. But every time we shot a scene, we'd look at the scene and be like, I did this wrong. Like, this is totally bad and wrong. So I'm going to do this scene differently. And then that scene was bad and wrong for a different reason. And then eventually, by the end of the movie, we started knowing what we were doing because this thing went on for 3 years. So, you add a little bit each time, but also, yes, if we had one thing to change would be not to cast a bunch of 19-year-olds as FBI agents and aliens and such.
When you guys are in pre-writing and scripting, what are some of the programs that you use?
When we're writing or editing? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Writing, like storyboards and all that.
Okay. There's a lot of writing programs out there. When I write, I usually use Final Draft, which is sort of...
Although the very free version of Final Draft is called Celtics, that's C-E-L-T-X. I am not a professional screenwriter, but when I do want to write things that let other people think I'm a professional screenwriter, Celtics, C-E-L-T-X, completely free and will make your stuff look like Final Draft. You export things as PDFs, which is a simple option from the main menu, and then everyone's like, oh my god, it looks great. And you let them think that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that was going to be my second point, but I'm glad you jumped in with it. Because I've never used Celtics, but I've heard great things. Final Draft is sort of the default go-to one, I think, that a lot of people use. Adobe Story, apparently, is...
Rising.
Rising.
Yeah. If you get the Creative Cloud package that Adobe offers now, it comes with a piece of software called Adobe Story. And that's for screenwriting, scheduling, and everything. And it exists in the cloud. You can share it with everybody. And when you're finished shooting the project, you can then import that story file into Premiere. And as you're ingesting all of your footage, Premiere will go through all of your footage and will word for that. Transcribe all of the audio, and then it will match the audio with the original script that you wrote. So now you have all of this rich metadata of how everything's related with very little effort. You make a computer do work for you.
I have Creative Cloud. I should really use that sometime.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the most important thing is whatever software you use, make sure it's actually built for writing scripts. Because if it's, don't use Microsoft Word and try to indent it properly, it's not going to work. And people will be able to see that it's not accurate. If you're trying to sell a script, that's bad. But even more importantly, if you're trying to make a movie and determine what length it is, script formatting is such that you can generally have about a page a minute, the way the action plays out in the dialogue. If you're doing it in Microsoft Word, I've seen people just submit like a 3-page Word document of action and be like, it's going to be a 3-minute movie. And no, that's going to be like a 15-minute, 20-minute movie because it's just how that formats the page. It's not meant for that. So just another thing to keep in mind when writing. Anyone else script writing software?
He also asked about storyboards, which is much more on the lines of animation. I know you guys did use one storyboard for one shoot. Do you guys typically
Usually
use
we go to you for storyboards, Chris, so why don't you handle that
Oh,
one?
okay.
Chris is also an excellent animator and illustrator over there on the microphone, so.
I'm going to keep this short because I'm not part of the panel, but when I do storyboards for things, I'm really old-fashioned. I do them on 3x5 cards and then put them up on a wall, and then you basically like figure out the shots from there, and then you scan them in and you use like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut or something to create an animatic out of that. So basically any kind of editing program any video editing program is what you could use for that. I don't know, turning it back to you guys, how often do you find it useful to use storyboards, or do you just not use that too often when you're doing live action?
It depends on the project. I think it is very useful. My problem is I am the worst artist ever, so drawing is not my specialty. So the more a computer program can take that over for me, or another human being, the happier I am, and so forth. I think, for example, the film dialogue tree that we made, Chris, I think I sent you the script and sort of a general idea of what the shots were, and you are also a filmmaker and you were able to kind of put together a storyboard we were able to use that maybe only needed a couple of tweaks after that. So that helps me tremendously to be, as a director, looking at my shots ahead of time and be like, this will work, this won't work, we just need to change this for whatever, the 180 rule or something, but I don't know. Rob?
I'll make this quick. The best time to use storyboards, they're always useful, but the best time to use them is when you don't have just a dialogue scene, when there's some kind of camera move or special effect going on, because then you really need to know how your shot is framed to either add things or choreograph them.
It's true. For Nerd vs. Geek, we hardly ever had storyboards because it was mostly people sitting around having a conversation. So there's only so many ways you can shoot that, unless you have a really interesting shot you want to do for a particular motivation for a particular reason. Most of the time, you've got your wide shot, you've got your 2 close-ups and a couple of other cutaways that you're using, and that covers you, especially for comedy. You're not doing anything for particular, like, dramatic additional reasons. That tends to make the most sense. So for Nerd vs. Geek, we also had Mike Lecision shooting it, and Mike tends to be
He has a whole storyboard in his head,
yeah,
I feel. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, so even episode 10, which had 6 people sitting around a table and is not necessarily straightforward in terms of what's supposed to be shot, Mike's like, just run the lines, just sit there and run the lines. And as we did it, he would look around the room and sort of put together, these are the shots I'm going to need to match all these eye lines together, because he was also the one editing it. So again, this was one episode of a web series. If we were making a feature film, we wouldn't be doing it that way. But it works. The shorter the project, probably the less. And the shorter the project and the more it's based on, I don't know, to me, comedy more than drama doesn't need storyboards quite as much. But I don't know how you guys feel about it.
I would agree with that. I've used storyboards primarily as a planning tool for cinematography, because that's just how I think. And when I'm sitting around reading the script, I get a much more creative idea about how to shoot things. Once you get on set, a lot of times chaos ensues, you start throwing things out, and then by the time you're done, you're sitting and editing, and you're just like, this looks okay, but it's not that idea I had in my head. And if you storyboarded it, you can cross them off as you get through the shots. So I found that to be a useful way of working.
We've been told the panel can run pretty much forever, but we won't keep you guys here forever. But if there's another question or two we can handle, and then perhaps take off, or if anyone else...
Does having a football player on your Gatorade bottle make you feel more macho?
It's a very good question.
Thank you.
I've never felt macho once in my life.
He's injured right now. It's Robert Griffin, guys.
I'd say yeah, though, to answer your
Is this a real
I
football
say,
player?
ooh, yeah.
Does having a hand injury make you feel more macho?
Very much so, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Rob a question. Not about your hand, but about your production, because Rob also has a web series called Sexy Danger, which you should all check out. It has, so far, what I've seen is basically sketch comedy.
It's how can I say this quickly? It's a hybrid sketch. It's a story about 6 people trying to make sketches and sell them to a network to get a TV show, but the network sees them as complete idiots who they can take advantage of. So they send them on wild goose chases, go hype your product, or virally market this to children. And they end up getting arrested and hospitalized at the end of the first season. The network calls them in and says, "You can stop being morons. We were just stealing your show." And they're like, "Oh, so now what?" And they're like, "Well, now you can get out and go die." And they're like, "Oh," and that's kind of where it ends. Then we'll pick up with season 2 with them trying to get their show back and fight the power. But it's a hybrid in the sense that while the show is going on, they're also making sketches which we'll be posting on YouTube between the release of the episodes, like a meta kind of, these are fictional characters, but here are the real sketches they're trying to make fully realized, just to try and cross over between genres. It's good for YouTube to take chances and see what you can do, because you can't really fail. You can be watched less than other people, but you really can't fail. Where did Matt go? He's like my security blanket at the table.
He's to your left.
Matt, we need you.
I guess
Table's
just
falling
what kind of age rating do you think works best for TV show stuff or for online things? Because James Rolfe is profanity laden and hilarious, but definitely rated R. You guys seem to be more on the PG-13 end of things.
I would say it depends upon what kind of short or film or series, whatever you're aiming to do. I seem to be going into my head about stand-up comedy. Brian Regan prides himself on not using any profanity, and he's hilarious, in my opinion.
He is.
But then you have, and certain comics actually respect him more because they don't go out and they just don't, he doesn't start dropping F-bombs and S-bombs just to get a laugh. So I guess, in a sense, it depends upon what you're trying to target. If you want to get that just kind of sudden spurt of laughter, then drop F-bombs all you want, and you're going to get that laugh. But if you really want to get a gut reaction to laughter, then it takes a little. I feel like it takes a little bit more effort to come up with a good story and a good build into a comedy laugh.
I agree. Although I did just make a film that's a giant penis joke with a bunch of dildos in it, so I'm probably not the person to ask.
That sounds hilarious.
Awesome.
It's a subtle bunch of penis jokes.
Yes, I think it's subtle.
I tend to find it interesting also to see what you can do pushing the boundaries of a PG-13 rating. And this is actually a good transition into how I'll end this panel. I'm gonna screen because it's one of the first things I came across, and I don't want to pan through this whole DVD. But it's a good example of this. Episode 5 of Nerd vs. Geek is one in which basically it's an energy drink company has recruited, Robb's character, Greg, in the show works for an energy drink company, and they're unveiling a new line of highly offensive products. So nothing about it goes beyond PG or PG-13, but if you're an adult, you can certainly pick up on other layers of humor that are in there. So it's, I think, an appropriate thing to end the panel on. And thank you all so much for coming. And it was great to be here at Retrocon, and thank you, Retrocon, as well.
Thank you.
It's about to get weird.